1 week season.
What is going on, OWS fam? Welcome to our first ever props talk with myself and JMaReasy from the Props Insider team. Really excited to be doing this year. So we're going to be doing this every week on Thursdays. This will come out shortly before Thursday Night Football. And what we're going to do is just kind of take a look behind the curtains at what we're looking at for props, why we're seeing certain things, which game environments we're paying attention to, what information we're paying attention to. We will already have some props in the props channel before this. We will have some props in the props channel after this. But before I go too deep into what this is and what it's all about, JMaReasy, Josh, welcome. Throw it over to you, man. How you doing?
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Having a great time. Ready for week one. You know, it was a long off season. Obviously, the Toronto Blue Jays doing well this year made it a little bit easier, but you know, these Canadian winters are tough. So definitely excited to jump into week one.
Yeah, man. Week one is great too for prop betting because there's so much that we can't know, but then there are those little things that we can, right? And so I think that there's always edges to find in this particular week. And this is something I'm excited to be doing this year, something we've been talking about since the spring. And I was able to dive into some of these early prop bets yesterday. I'll be finding some more today, tomorrow. And it's just really fun to be able to kind of shift my mind from DFS over to props, where a lot of the thinking is the same, but also there are some key differences in terms of like how we can leverage this to our advantage and maximize the money that we're making off of it. So before we dive in, Josh, you want to talk just a little bit about our props package and kind of what we offer, how you guys attack things, and what you bring to the table on all this.
Yeah, absolutely. 1 week season fam. I have always wanted to say that. I'm a lifetime subscriber right from the beginning. Some of you guys will already know me from the prop streets, but for those that are new to props or looking to jump into the first time with OWS, my name is JMaReasy, Josh for short, and I lead our props team here at 1 week season. We're glad to have you guys tuning in to our weekly show here on Thursday nights, where we'll be taking a look at the props board leading into Thursday Night Football. In true 1 week season fashion, this isn't a pick show. It's more behind the scenes kind of look into how we read the props board and what goes into deciding which bets we put out to our subscribers. JM and I will be looking at a few situations each week that caught our interest, the stats and projections that help us identify them, with the goal of bridging the gap between DFS and sports betting, like you mentioned. There's a lot of similarities. A lot of the research is the same, but at the end of the day, we are looking at different things. A lot of times it's medians for us, where it's the outliers, the high ceiling for you guys in DFS. While there are a lot of books for us to bet at, we stick to mostly FanDuel, DraftKings, and Caesars for our officials. You won't see us putting out anything at MGM or Bet365 or the Canby books, even though those books generally have better lines due to liquidity and limiting and things like that. We launched our NFL props package this week, coming in at a steal of a deal of $149 a season. We have monthly plans for $49 a month, as well as a pay-as-you-go $19 weekly. Get your feet wet, jump in, download DraftKings for maybe the first time, and just have a bet or two with with your family here. With that, let's get into our first situation. A Sunday afternoon game here between the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. Gotta cancel, stop the screen.
Hey, while you're hitting on that, I do want to mention, you said this about we're going to do a true 1 week season fashion, not picks. We're going to do a look behind the curtain. So just to be clear, if you're not a Props Insider subscriber, Props Insider is kind of the opposite of that, right? We're literally just giving you props to bet, which is what we really like about it is we're doing all the research for you because it is still an inefficient market. We're able to find those things. Obviously, keeping that behind the paywall for paying subscribers, and this show isn't specifically bets. You will get some of our bets in here and some of the things that we've already dropped, and maybe the lines have already moved, or some of the things where the lines haven't moved yet. So you will get some bets in here, but also just kind of how to think through props and how to attack all this, which I think is really critical in terms of understanding what you're doing in this space and maximizing the ROI. Also, you mentioned the price. Was a funny story about that. We always do on 179, and then when I rolled everything out on the site, I made a mistake and listed it at 149. 179 was already, we're kind of undercharging for this, but we love to give people a good deal. And then I put it in at 149. So we're riding with that this year. So yeah, an even better deal than like the actual props price.
Yeah, already a 30% discount. And again, 1 week season, true fashion. I think maybe that's the biggest thing between DFS and sports betting. DFS is pretty static. As long as you get there by, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, 1 p.m. lock, you're okay. You're on an even playing field with everybody else. But in the sports betting streets, it pays to be first. It pays to be the early bird gets the worm. Some of these prop services out here move lines so quickly, and once they hit them, it's gone. So it is really important for us to try to be first, try to make sure that there's enough liquidity there for our subs, and just try to find that perfect balance between, finding information early and getting it out to you guys and making sure that we can still profit from it, right? It's great to have the information. It's great to be first, but if you're too early, it's just not there. So starting with the Cincinnati Bengals Cleveland Browns game, the game is a total of 48.5 points, which opened all the way back in the middle of August. These lines have been out for a while. It opened up at 44.5 points when the Browns were still a question mark at starting quarterback. Since then, we've had Joe Flacco named the starter for the Browns, and a pretty steady dose of money coming in the over. We're already up maybe 4 points on that total there. Flacco spent 5 games as the Browns quarterback to end the 2023 season, and he went 4-1 before losing to the Texans in the playoffs. There's not a lot of change here for the Browns since he was there last, as many of the same pieces remain intact, including head coach Kevin Stefanski. I can't imagine the Browns have chosen to go with Joe Flacco here to hide him. The early part of the season should really just be about evaluating the talent around him that the Browns do have. Jam, anything here that sticks out for you?
Yeah, so you talk about lines moving, and you guys dropped a line on this over for it was 235 passing yards, right? And when I went in last night, it was like plus 250 plus passing yards was like I think minus 111, and so one of these where we were able to catch it a little bit early, and the odds are starting to shift on it, or at least that's what I was seeing last night. But yeah, one of the cool things here too about, because I'm going to be involved in props this year, and you and I have an opportunity to bounce thoughts off each other, and we kind of get this cool blend of like people who don't know your background, right? You've been prop betting successfully for a living essentially for how long?
Yeah, so since COVID, I was in Australia. I was a backpacker. I was working on the farms doing the working holiday visa, and then I had to come home, and I sent an email to you guys about, hey, I think props and sports betting it's about to kick off, and Aaron loved it, and the original 1 week season guys here, you guys might remember me writing the weekly piece, a couple of props a week, and back then the lines didn't move. I could write that on Wednesday or Thursday. You guys would get it Friday night or Saturday, and the lines would be the same. That is not the same ecosystem that we now have.
Yeah, and that angle of you being able to successfully bet props for so long, it's find a lot of times you guys have this calculus of like, we'll take this bet up to this number, right? And so there's this understanding of all the small components of where a bet stops being plus EV and what the little statistical edges are that we're looking at. And then I'm able to kind of balance that with the coaching perspective where it's like, yeah, this might look like a 55-45 bet or a 50-50 bet, but to me, it's actually more like 60-40 or 65-35 because of the understanding of how these coaching staffs operate, or how this team is looking to try to win games, or how this team is likely to look to try to win this particular game, which I think is a really cool blend of what we're bringing to the table and how we're able to sort through these things. And so I really like the points that you brought up here of why did the Browns put Joe Flacco in place here? They didn't put him in place here to hide Joe Flacco and run the ball with Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. They put him in place here to throw the ball. And there's a component here too of once you lose buy-in from the locker room, that's sort of it, right? So if you're the Cleveland Browns and you get to week 8 or week 9 and you turn the ball over to Dylan Gabriel, and then a few weeks later you turn it over to Shedeur Sanders, that's one thing, right? Your team is kind of saying, okay, like we're on the back half of the season, but now we've got the rookie quarterback in and we're trying to see what we have with him. But at this point in the season, every team still thinks they can go to the playoffs. If you are in that Browns locker room, you think you can go to the playoffs. And if you're out in practice every day and you see Joe Flacco, veteran Super Bowl winning quarterback who has a better feel for the offense and whatnot than these rookies, that's what you want. You want that guy under center. You want to come out and play hard in week 1. And so, yeah, I very much think that this team is starting out, look at the Texans 2 years ago. Everybody had them dead and buried, right? It was the worst roster in the NFL. Look up at the end of the season and they're in the playoffs. Last year, Washington was kind of a joke of a roster. We look at the end of the season, they're in the NFC Championship game. And not to say that the Browns will do that. I don't think they will, but I think that they're going to be more competitive early in the season than people expect them to be. And part of that's going to be trying to win games. And so take that, add it to the game environment, the matchup that they're facing, the offense that they're facing. And it just makes a lot of sense to expect Flacco to be throwing the ball. As you highlighted, he went over this line 6 times in this same offense with this same coaching staff, all 5 regular season starts, playoff start. And so, looking for things like that where we can just find clear value, I think is something that we always want to look into. And this one really stood out to me as well.
Yeah, I would not be the person in the Cleveland Browns locker room telling Myles Garrett that the season is over and we do not have a chance.
Yeah, exactly. And like, he wanted out, right? They gave him the big contract. They offered him a big contract. He said no. They offered him a bigger contract. He said no. Finally, they offered him a big enough contract. He was like, all right, fine, I'll stick around with the Browns. But like, these guys want to play, and they, Flacco's going to be a big part of that early in the season. Anything else you're seeing on this particular bet?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, 6 of 6 with Cleveland last year. He averaged 320 yards. So this line does not seem to match up with, what he did in Cleveland 2 years ago. Joe's old enough where I'm not quite sure that he's lost that much of a step in these last 2 years. He played a couple games for Indianapolis last year, but a lot of the pieces are the same over in Cleveland, and this is a great game environment for some explosion. So with Joe Flacco, let's cook, Joe.
Yeah. And, we took, you took that line. I think there's even alternate lines that we could take here. We won't talk about that here, but anybody who's in props insider in the prop bet this channel in Discord, you caught this, whatever it was, a couple days ago. And I definitely think we're getting good value here on this bet.
Yeah, when we put this out to subscribers, the reaction was, hey, how much is too much? Where are we drawing the line? Are we going 350? We're definitely going over 300. If you can get 300 passing yards at 300 or better, I think that's great. You're going to have some degenerates riding it all the way to the top, but even when in 2024, Cleveland was a top 8 team in pass rate over expectation, and that was with Watson, Winston, DTR, and Bailey Zappi. So it's not like we're trying to take a super run heavy team here and make something of it. The hype on Joe Burrow. It's the best training camp of his career. If the Bengals can come out hot after struggling like they did last year, Stefanski will have no problem just letting Joe Flacco throw this ball. As we mentioned, we grabbed the 235 earlier in the week on FanDuel at 114. This one minus 111 here. What that just means is we have to bet $111 to win 100. So when you see a minus number here, that's telling you how many dollars you need to bet to win 100, and a plus would be bet 100 to win that much. So we feel good. We had it at 114. We've got a couple of yards of closing line value here. We have a new DC in Cincinnati, Al Golden. He was the DC for Notre Dame. He played a lot of man. I think at the highest rate. That's what made us lean kind of to the yards versus the rate stats, since man coverage leads to a lot more big plays than zone, which typically sees more kind of dink and dunk kind of type things. If this was somebody that maybe was playing a little bit more zone, we maybe would have went with pass attempts, which was another super strong thing. But, if Joe Flacco is cooking, it could be in the big play variety, and we just love to kind of get the yards here instead.
Yeah, I love that thought process and kind of how we arrived at this one. I still think, shocking that this line is as low as it is, and certainly one that I think we're going to keep seeing it climb as we get closer to the end of the week. And just really quickly, we'll get to more alt lines here at the end, but the way to kind of think about those alt lines is if it's a plus 300, right, and you're betting 100 to win 300, then that means that if you got that right 3 times and got it wrong once, then if you got it right 1 time and got it wrong twice, then you would end up at break even, right? So then it's like, okay, if this hits a third of the time, it's break even. And so then you can kind of think through that in terms of like, if we played out this game 100 times, would there be more than 33 times where things would play out this way? And so when you get to those plus 300 at 300 yards or whatever, you can lean on game logs, you can lean on past games against this team and kind of get a sense for those types of things. Obviously, we'll be here in the Props Insider channel to kind of help you guys navigate those as well. And I think one of the big things to think about here too is the concept of props is not hitting it big all at once, right? It's not, you can pull that over to underdog and try to hit those 4 or 5 leg parlays. But the idea here is that if they're a consistent small edge and you're consistently taking advantage of them, that money builds up over time. And so you don't have to hit the home run on one of these plus 300s. If you can just continue to find these plus EV bets and lock them in week after week, you'll have that plus 5% ROI, plus 7%, whatever it might be. Yeah. At the end of the season, that money adds up.
Yeah, we're very much kind of the equivalent of a cash game. And you know what? To be honest, I moved into props 1 week way back when. Everybody was on a running back, and he's 60% owned or whatever, and he wasn't a winner that week. Too many people owned him. He wasn't a big thing, but he crushed all his props. I just kind of changed my thinking to, hey, there's all this information out here, and we're all competing against each other with these same lineups, with these same guys. We know the guys, though. We have a really good understanding of who is going to hit. And why don't we just kind of take that over to the median instead, where we don't need to hit the ceiling. We just have to be right about the player. And since then, it's been great to kind of mix that DFS. I still dabble over here in Ontario. We've lost DraftKings. We've lost FanDuel. We still have Owner Box, so I'm still out there in the streets. But it's just, as you said, we're not trying to hit the home run. We're trying to be here, get that 5 to 8 to 10% ROI over time, and just take as many swings as we can. But we're trying to hit singles around here.
Yep. Yeah, stack those. We're Moneyball here, right? Stack those singles. It all adds up. Okay, so Flacco, that's ugly in terms of name value, right? Do you have any uglier names that we want to look at this week?
Burying the lead here. All right, let's jump into our second game situation here that caught our eye. It's the New Orleans Saints. Is that Orleans or New Orleans Saints?
It depends, I guess. My dad actually grew up in Louisiana. He says Louisiana. If you get outside the state, everyone says Louisiana. But technically, if you live there, you say Louisiana. I think New Orleans, if you live there. I don't know for sure, though, on that one.
Yeah, I'm close to Wasaga Beach, but we say Wasaga around here. Yeah. On the Arizona side, we have a returning head coach and defensive coordinator, so we can expect their defense to be somewhat similar to what we saw last year. That was a 60-40 split between zone and man, which is a top half rate for zone coverage, but nothing extreme. On the other side of the ball, completely different from a coaching perspective. We get a huge change with the addition of head coach Kellen Moore, who left the Eagles to turn around a bad franchise with some playmakers. When healthy, I'm going to say it, I actually kind of like the top of the Saints, skilled group here with Kamara, Olave, Shaheed. I think Moore has a real chance of creating some great matchups for his guys through pre-snap motion and tempo. The Eagles ran the 4th most plays last year in 2024. This game has a 43.5 total here. It's been bounced around between the open of 42 and 43. But we do get nearly a touchdown spread here with the Saints as a 6.5 dog at home, again, in the dome. JM, anything here you see from the Saints team that dealt with a ton of injuries last year to the wide receiver room?
Yeah, this game has actually continued to stand out to me in DFS because you have these invisible teams. You have these teams where the narrative is so negative heading into the season that you can forget that these are still NFL teams in a league full of parity where the coaching staff and the players, they're trying to figure out how to win the game. So think about the Patriots last year beating the Bengals in week 1. There are always these surprises in week 1. There's a lot of talk about the Cardinals being a sneaky team in the NFC West, where obviously they're a step below the Rams and they're probably a step below the 49ers, maybe even a step below the Seahawks. But there's, they're kind of a trendy pick of like, hey, this team could finish second. This team could even surprise and finish first. Every year under Jonathan Gannon, they're playing well, they're competing. And, you kind of forget that, hey, the Saints are going to be competing as well. And so I kind of think that Kellen Moore is going to come out and have some surprises. I think that this is a sneaky game in DFS for large field play, but I hadn't really thought about this from the props perspective until you brought up Spencer Rattler. It was like, oh yeah. And I'm going to throw it over to you for like what's the exact bet that you found here on Spencer Rattler? Because to me, it just, after you threw it out there, it was like, oh, this one's so obvious that I was surprised that it was as low as it was. And obviously it's not as low as it was anymore, but the thought process behind it.
Yeah, we were quick to this one. This is one of the first things that we researched, the first things that we found, and we actually hit the over 30.5 pass attempts here for Spencer Rattler. It's already up to 32.5, and I know 2.5 or 2 attempts doesn't seem like a big deal, but for us that's the goal. That's the goal. That's what we want. That's what we want to see. Even just getting one attempt is still moving in our favor. It's good. But when we get those 2 attempts, we feel really good about our bet. I think it opened at 30.5 to start because Spencer Rattler didn't play, all his games last year. A lot of times he came in halfway. He didn't get all the snaps. So one of the things that we found is that in his 5 full games where he played at least 90% of the snaps, Rattler attempted 30, 35, 36, 40, and 42 pass attempts. We thought that number was a little bit low because of the partial games played. And the Saints were bottom 10 in plays per game last year. As I mentioned, Moore's coming over from running the 4th most plays with the Eagles. In that one game that Rattler did have 30 passes and was under, that was a 34-0 loss to the Green Bay Packers. And Kamara didn't play, Olave didn't play, Shaheed didn't play. I'm pretty sure his 2 leading receivers were tight ends, at least 2 of the 3. He led the team in rushing. He didn't have anybody. And I like your point there about, you bring over this head coach, you bring over, in my opinion, an elite offensive mind. And what those guys will do when they have bad teams or taking over a team that, really wants to ascend, they use pre-snap motion to help their quarterback identify coverage and get their playmakers into, good matchups into space. The best way for bad offenses to, make plays is to play fast, to move around and create, as many communication errors on the defense as you can.
Yeah. And then I think there's probably some level of thought in this original line of 30.5 pass attempts of like, oh, well, the Eagles, lots of games, Jalen Hurts is under 30 pass attempts. The Eagles like to run the ball. The Eagles have maybe the best offensive line since the 1990s Dallas Cowboys. The Eagles have a dominant defense that was able to keep them in the lead of games. The Eagles had Saquon Barkley. The Saints have a running back in Alvin Kamara who I heard this the other day. I haven't verified it, but I'm pretty sure it's true. Has never rushed for over 1,000 yards in his career. Obviously, dynamic playmaker, but he's not the ground and pound running back. And who's their number 2? Kendre Miller, who still hasn't impressed. Like, they're not a team that's built to say, all right, let's just run the ball here. They don't have they have, an aging defense where Demario Davis and Cam Jordan are legendary players who are like very deep into their careers. No Marshawn Lattimore, no Tyrann Mathieu. Like, this is a very different defense even than they had under Dennis Allen. And we expect this defense to be below average to bad. And then we expect this offense to be looking for ways to kind of the opposite of the Browns thing where like, okay, they're not putting Flacco in there to hide him. Well, in this situation, they're putting Spencer Rattler in there to like try to develop him, right? They need to develop Spencer Rattler. They need to develop Tyler Shuck. It's not so much about how do we win these games. Obviously, they're going to be trying to do that, but they're also going to be saying, how do we continue to develop these guys? And that doesn't mean, hey, let's hide this guy and just try to run the ball. What difference does it make if they go 6-11 versus 4-13 this year? And the difference in those 2 wins is a couple extra mistakes from Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck when they're under center, right? What matters is that they're giving these guys chances to develop and to play the game and to take chances. And so it makes a lot of sense to expect, especially as them being underdogs in this spot to the Cardinals, kind of significant underdogs in this spot to the Cardinals, makes sense for them to be throwing the ball more than 30.5 times. And so, yeah, when you sent that one over, it was like, oh, that's one I hadn't thought of. And then I started thinking about it. It was like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And, I've had some notes in Discord this week about just my developing thoughts around this game environment as one that doesn't really stand out in small field play. It doesn't stand out where you're kind of trying to lock in as much certainty as you can. But as you get to larger tournament fields, you start saying, man, there's some interesting components between the Cardinals and the Saints. And one of the ways to sort of take advantage of those interesting components is just get that prop bet in play on Spencer Rattler this week, which again, the line has moved at this point. But if you were in the props channel, you were able to catch this one pretty early. And like you said, a lot of times we already said we're playing for small edges here. We're playing for that 5%, 7%, 10% ROI. Well, that two point movement of pass attempts, that's huge because a lot of times it's going to be that hook. It's going to be, at 32.5, it's going to be 32 pass attempts or 33 pass attempts. Yeah. But for us, we're cleanly on the over either way on that once, we got that 30.5.
Yeah, we really like that bet. I would venture to guess that that's probably going to be the most movement that we will get in our favor this week. We're really happy we got to that one early.
Yeah. And then in that spot, well, you got anything else to add on that spot before we move on?
I think I'm good there. I just think that, when you do get these elite offensive minds, they especially when they don't have the talent around them, this is going to be the least amount of talent Kellen Moore's ever coached, and I think that he is going to try to put his staple on the offense and put his quarterback in a position to succeed. And that's going to be playing fast. That's going to be moving these guys around to diagnose coverage, to just give his quarterback that extra little heads up. And I think we're going to be early here. And then when you kind of look back to the full games of Spencer Rattler last year, especially with how few plays they had per game, just that passing rate is very extreme.
Yeah. So we've touched on Joe Flacco. We've touched on Spencer Rattler. We have any actual good players to touch on?
Yeah. I mean, it matters who you ask. Is it the baker or the cake? It always comes down to, is it the recipe that makes something good, or is it the person that's making it? And we're going to go to our third game situation here. And we're going to hit up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons in this divisional matchup with a total of 46.5, a couple of 47s on the board. Combined with that tight spread of 1.5 points and a dome again, we can expect these two teams to go back and forth and put some real points up on the board. We'll start with Atlanta here. The strength is the O-line and the running game, where their outside zone running scheme should be able to really pile up some yards on the ground as they run away from Vita Vea. Vita Vea actually has missed practice both yesterday and today with a foot injury. That would be terrible news for them and their ability to stop the run. I liked what I saw from Atlanta's offensive coordinator last year. They unlocked Drake London by moving around a lot more pre-snap. Again, that motion, get those matchups that we want, diagnose coverage. I think we all expect a big year from Bijan Robinson, who really took over the backfield late. He averaged 22.8 carries over the final 6 weeks. It looks like we should get Mooney active after a limited practice. The Atlanta offense looks to be at full strength. It should really be able to push the pace. On the Tampa Bay side, we do lose former offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. We all know that. But the reports out of Tampa Bay, that offense, it's going to stay the same. It's going to have the same concepts. It's going to have the same verbiage as it did in 2024, because the pass game coordinator, Josh Grizzard.
Grizzard,
Grizzard. What a cool name, Josh first, but Grizzard actually. He's taken over the reins in 2025. You love that continuity, right? This is good news for Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, the rest of the Tampa Bay Bucs. They need this. They want this win. It's an early divisional win. What else are you seeing here?
Yeah, the continuity is a big thing because Liam Cohen was only there for 1 year. I think people forget that, right? It was Dave Canales before that. And then he got the Panthers head coaching job. So Liam Cohen comes in. And so having that continuity makes a big difference. You see it in teams that lose an offensive coordinator and somebody else steps up versus teams that lose an offensive coordinator and then they bring in somebody new from the outside. It's a very different thing, right? At this point, this is more Baker's offense than it is any individual offensive coordinator's offense. And so I don't expect any drop off from Baker Mayfield. And what's interesting to me is, so first off, the game environment's conducive to passing. I hit on this earlier this week in my journal in Discord, but Baker Mayfield, five of his top six fantasy games last year came in games that the Bucs won by 17 or more points. So he doesn't even, it's in the nature of this team to be aggressive. And so understanding that is a big part of understanding why I like the over on his passing yards here. And there's, a couple ways to play it, right? What's his just straight over under, like his main prop bet?
So we're up to 240 now on DraftKings. A couple 239s moving around, but right around that 240 mark.
Okay, so Mike Evans missed 3 games last year. That leaves 14 regular season games. Baker went over 250 not only over 250. I'm sorry, over 268 in 268 or more in 9 of those 14 games, right? And so what I really like about this one is it's not just that the over is a pretty solid bet, but it's that the room for taking an alt line on this or building a ladder on this, where you can bet the over, but then also bet over 250, over 260, over 270, and try to stack all those wins together, is really in place for something like this, to where I think that the concerns around maybe changes on the team or Chris Godwin being out, but Chris Godwin was out for almost the entire season last year, right? So I think this just sets up really well for this team, this offense, and from a mindset perspective of how this team approaches games. Defensive head coach, but their defensive identity is to blitz. Last year was the second most in the NFL. They were one of the lowest pressure rate teams. Todd Bowles does not care. He can take on a quarterback whose numbers against the blitz are astronomical and numbers when not blitz are much worse. He will still play. It does not matter, right? Their mindset is like, we're going to be aggressive. And this, component of them of Baker having 5 of his 6 best fantasy games of the year last year and blowout wins also speaks to this. It's like, regardless of what's going on, this team wants to be aggressive. If they are being aggressive on defense and giving up big plays, that's fine. They'll be aggressive on offense. If they're being aggressive on defense and making big plays on defense, they still remain aggressive on offense. And then on top of all of that, especially if Vita Vea is healthy, they tend to filter teams so far away from the run that opponents have to pass the ball, which kind of elevates that back and forth type of environment that we want anyway. So yeah, to me, this Baker one is just hands down one of the best bets I think we'll find all season, because if we could play out this slate 100 times, there's no way to me that he's finishing under 240 passing yards, 50 of those times or more. And just really nice value on this one.
Yeah, it's down in the 240s due to some uncertainty, right? And if we think that it's the Baker, it's not the recipe, that it is Baker's offense, that he's the one that has the most control. I really like going with the kind of the alt little ladder here instead of just going with the straight crop. We get a bigger payout. It's a little bit more DFS. We risk a little bit less if we're wrong. But really the big thing for me is if Vita Vea is out and Atlanta is able to run their offense, run it to the outside, pick up yards, pick up, big chunks there, or we get a little bit of movement here. Somebody must be hitting it. If we get those big chunk plays in the run and then Drake London really has been unlocked, we're going to get Tampa Bay playing from behind. And if you guys have read the edge games this week, you'll see that Hilo pointed out that when Tampa Bay is trailing, that they have a pass rate of 71% when trailing by 7. We should get Cade Otton here to help with the tackle issue. So I wouldn't be betting Cade Otton overs, but from a protection aspect, it's great that if we can get him active, he practiced to start this week. I'm just excited to just see if it's the scheme or if it's the players. And, I'm a big believer of, my 11 versus your 11, or, up here in Canada, my 12 versus your 12. And, we work as hard as we do to execute the things that we do well. And, we love to scheme and be schematic when it helps. But when the chips are on the table, it comes down to those 12 guys on the field.
Yeah, or 11 if we're talking about.
Yeah, or 11.
Definitely like this spot, and I feel like this is one of those early season edges where this one goes away as we get more certainty, but the opportunity is still there for us here at this point in the season. Anything else to add on this Baker one from you, Josh?
No, that's everything I got for there.
All right, we've kind of teased this alt type stuff. You want to talk a little bit more about that and see if there's anything that you're seeing in that area? Because obviously we're going to have some people who are NFL Props Insider subscribers who are watching this, other people who are already prop bettors watching this, but probably a lot of you watching this, you're new to prop betting and you just saw a new show on OWS, you open it up. So kind of talk a little bit about these, like the idea of these alt lines and kind of why we attack them the way that we do.
Yeah, so these alt lines just give us a little bit of upside, give us those great sweats that all these DFS players are looking for, right? Instead of kind of risking the same amount of money as you have a potential to win, we could risk a little and win a lot, right? So we have that upside here, and to keep on track here with a lot of our ugly names. The first one I've been looking at comes from the New York Giants at the Washington Commanders, and last year, it was pretty tough to watch the Giants outside of Malik Neighbors, but the addition of Russell Wilson should give this team, reasonable play at quarterback. Russ has definitely lost a bit of his playmaking ability, to put it mildly, as he's got older, but he still throws a beautiful deep ball. Wilson had a plus 16% completion percentage over expectation on deep passes last year, and that's by far the best in the NFL. No one else was even over 10%. Wilson was at 16%. While the majority of the targets are going to flow through Neighbors, Darius Slayton fits perfectly with what Russ does at a high level. Just a little stat here: among 44 receivers with 200 plus routes versus man, Slayton had the third highest average depth of target at 14.8 yards. So pretty much the opposite here of Wendell Robinson. So I like going up, starting at 50 yards or maybe even 60 yards, or maybe we can even get wild and ladder that up to 70. But we get a player here that we project to see 80% of the routes versus the Commanders team that played the fourth most man coverage in 2024. So we have the third highest ADOT versus the team that plays it the most. On top of that, they actually played the third most cover one, which is typically very vulnerable to deep balls. You're going to have a lot of attention on Neighbors. You're going to have that cover one safety help, to his side of the field. And we're going to get Slayton running, mostly against Washington's rookie cornerback 2 and Trey Amos. They're 6-point underdogs. It's a 45.5 point total, which is great in a New York Giants game. So let's giddy up. So I like 50 plus yards around 275. You can see it's 267 here, or 60 yards, anything over 425. JM.
Yeah, so when you take one of those, how much? I mean, if you're saying like say $100 for like a typical unit, what are you going to do on a bet like that?
Yeah, so we usually, if we're just doing one, maybe we toss it at 0.5 units or 0.25 units. If we ladder it up, we'll usually start with our main prop. We actually took Darius Slayton. I think it was over 27. I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, but low. We like it. All that takes is one play for him. A out of 14.8 gets you there pretty quickly. But when we do ladder and we take these 50, 60, 70%, these things aren't likely to hit, even though we're trying to put ourselves in the right position to hit the upside when we are right. These aren't things that we want to hang our hat on. These aren't things that we really want to overinvest in. So we'll do something like, on $100 unit, maybe we'll be $25, maybe we'll be $10, maybe we'll be $10. So here we have about 0.5 of a unit total on each rung of the ladder. So we would call this a ladder. If you think of a ladder, they have lots of rungs as you go up. So a 50, 60, and 70 plus rung ladder, and we can hit it all here.
Yeah, and I love this thinking too, because it's one of the when I first started doing some prop betting, it was AJ Brown, and it might have been his game against Tennessee. It was his first year with the Eagles. It might have been his game against Tennessee, or maybe it was the game against, I think it was Arizona that year, the game against. But it was like, man, when AJ Brown hits, he doesn't just hit for barely over his yardage. He hits big, right? And so I bet, like a asymmetric bet at like plus 140 yard or 140 plus yards or whatever it was, right? I ended up hitting it, but I hadn't even thought about doing the ladder of like betting the rungs on the way up, right? So I got the full payout at the top, but I didn't ladder up other payouts on the way up. And so this way you kind of get like, you get your full unit bet, say on the over 24.5, if you want to do it that way, or maybe you put a half unit toward that just to kind of cover if you don't hit these other ones. You got a full unit at risk total, but then you've also got like, hey, if we're hitting on the way up, we're getting paid on each of these legs up. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't get all the way up, over 60 or whatever, like you're still getting those other rungs along the way and coming out nicely ahead. And so that concept is really cool. And obviously something that if you're a prop bettor, it's pretty obvious. If you're not, then it was like, oh, a revelation, like, oh, here's what I should have done instead. But we can kind of take that DFS mindset of playing to the upside and then say, okay, how do we take advantage of that in props? Because there are players who fall not just, barely over or barely under, but they fall way to one side or the other, which, if you're ready, I've got one of those players as well on my end. All
right, let's get over to it. I think we're going back to a familiar game here, aren't we?
Yes, sir. So Mike Evans, last year, he went over 70.5 yards 5 times in 13 healthy games. Okay, 5 out of 13, not tremendous.
Not great.
In those 5 times that he hit for 89, 94, 97, 118, and 159. And so again, just a reminder that this Mike Evans component is, he's not just a guy who they're treating him as a possession receiver and just getting him the ball a steady number of times each game. It's like, hey, when we're focused on Mike Evans, we're throwing him the ball downfield. And when he's hitting that, he's often hitting for big games. Baker Mayfield joked, Josh, you know me, a lot of you listeners know me. I listen to a ton of press conferences and interviews and whatnot. And as I've said before, like I listen to him on 2x speed. I might listen for 10 or 15 hours and I catch 3 or 4 nuggets, right? But it's 3 or 4 nuggets that actually end up being critical. Baker Mayfield joked this offseason that the Buccaneers offense is basically just where's Mike Evans? Throw the ball to him. Well, part of that is Chris Godwin got hurt at the start of the year. And once Chris Godwin got hurt, Mike Evans got hurt. They both got hurt in the same game. Well, once Evans comes back, what was their offense? Their offense was, where's Mike Evans? Throw the ball to him. So after he came back, 68 yards, 118, 69, 159, 69, 97, 89, 92. That's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal run of production. Well, what do we have this week? Yes, we have Emeka Egbuka, but we also have no Jalen McMillan. We have no Chris Godwin. And Emeka Egbuka is a rookie in his very first career game. And so to me, this offense is going to be in week one. Where's Mike Evans? Let's throw the ball to him. Baker has no problem throwing it to him when he's covered, figuring that Mike Evans is going to catch those 50-50 balls. And if he doesn't, he's going to make sure the other guy doesn't catch it. So again, 3 games under 70 after he came back and he was the lead receiver, but all 3 of those were barely under. It was 68, 69, 69. And then he's got these other games where 118, 159, 97, 89, and then in the playoffs, 92. And so, I think that running a ladder up on Mike Evans is a really interesting one, because if he's hitting for plus 65, plus 70 plus yards, like there's a pretty good chance that he's going over that, because that just means that this game plan is working of getting the ball to Mike Evans. He's hitting these big plays. And similar to Slayton, like one extra catch for Evans is often the difference between 70 yards and 90 yards, or even 70 yards and 110 yards. So you can run that ladder up and just take advantage of the upside and win more when you win.
Yeah, and especially right now, these numbers will come down. One of the things that we're really making sure that we don't do in our projections and our bet selection here is, we all have a bias to the shiny new toy, right? Everybody wants to be first to that new player, and Emeka Egbuka, he has some shine to him, definitely, especially with Chris Godwin's injury. It's not sexy to click Mike. Everybody wants to be on the rookie, and we just need one game off the start of the season. Baker's safety blanket here. A couple big plays, and we're going to go all the way up this ladder here.
Yeah, really like that one. Obviously, like this game environment, but there's some fun things to think about there in that game environment, and then how we can actually play around with that game environment to maximize our chances to the upside this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got anything else on your end that we want to touch on before we get out of here?
No, I think that's good. On top of the pros product here, we are out here giving out picks. As I said, we do have 7 to 15 bets that we are going to be sending to you that are just click and print, as they say. But the other side of our pros product here is just the community that we do have. But behind the paywall here. It's I'm part, or I look at lots of different channels on our Discord here, and there's a lot of great information being shared in our inner circle channel, and our single entry and our 3 max and our GPP. But we definitely do have a very tight knit, being a little bit smaller. We have a really tight knit community here in the prop streets, and not only is it plays and information being sent back and forth, but there's a lot of learning, and there's a lot of learning here from our contributors. We have 5, 6, 7 guys in there almost all the time, answering your questions, helping out. But we have a very sharp community, and as I said, it's we all can win. We're not playing against each other. We're in DFS. You maybe don't want to give your secret play away, but for here we can all win at the same time. So it is just a very, very strong community that is a family. And, I would just like to stress that, if anybody is kind of on the fence of, wanting to get into prop betting, but doesn't know how, hasn't downloaded the app, doesn't know what minus 110 means, that isn't a barrier. All you have to do is, grab this pay as you go, $19 a week to come find out. And during that 1 week, for $20, invaluable the amount of information and process that you're going to pick up just in that 1 week.
Yeah, man, I think it's a great shout. And it's something, that Zanimir highlighted before of because one of the interesting components here is I don't think we started out with OWS having a huge community of prop bettors. So it's more like there are some people who are in the Props Insider and in that, props channel that have been prop bettors, right? And then they've joined and they're part of the community, but there's a much larger chunk that started betting through OWS and joined that community. And Zanimir said in the past, that community aspect is as important to a lot of the subscribers as the actual bets themselves, and is a big part of what they're here for and why they stick around, because there is so much alpha that gets shared in there. And then just I know sitting in there sweating the games, right? Like the first year we had the props product, I was in there a lot because it was like, I was like, come on, I want all of our props to hit, And so it's just fun to have those people that can be in there with you on a nightly basis. And, prop betting is kind of like a lifestyle thing where you add it as an extra layer. You get the alerts on your phone when we drop a bet. You go in and bet it, and then any night that you want to, you got people in there to hang out with and kind of sweat these games with. And so, I think it's a really cool component about what we do with Props Insider. So, there's the channel right there, and there's the Props Bet This channel where you get our bets dropped in, and you see some bets from me, some bets from Pulse, some bets from Jreasy.
Oh, little sneak one there. Yeah. So just to show you, we aren't, we're here to help, right? We try to make it as clear as possible. We have good 2 numbers. We try to show you all the different books that they're at. We have these little blurbs here. A lot of the stuff that we were talking about here. I would venture to say that, definitely over 50, but probably closer to 75% of people that when they joined the props product, they were not sports bettors, right? It's not like everybody came in here knowing exactly what to do. Almost, our base is OWS DFS players, right? And they've come over, they found another edge, and they're just there to take advantage of it. A lot of people use the props as a more stable way to control their bankroll during DFS season, right? We can kind of, while we're trying to wait for that big hit in DFS, we can have those small wins along the way to kind of supplement that bankroll, right? So you don't have to be a DFS player or a sports bettor or a prop bettor. Those things can definitely work together.
Yeah, 100%. I like the way you framed it, like kind of like cash games, except that you're not competing against other people. You're competing against the books, and there are still edges against the books because, they limit the amount that you can put down on an individual prop bet. They're not, if they get a game line wrong, somebody might come in and bet $2 million on it, right? And that's a big loss that they're taking. If they get a prop bet wrong, there might be 100 people who come in and drop $100 on it, and the line moves, right? And so they're able to get these out there kind of as a loss leader. They're obviously trying to sharpen up their game and lose those leading losses as little as possible. But there are still edges, and so it's fun to be able to hunt these down and help out the community, and then all kind of be in this together. So I am really excited about this show. Josh, really appreciate you being on with me, and we're going to be here every Thursday. We're going to be recording around 6 p.m. Eastern, and then it'll go up on the YouTube channel and the props or the OWS podcast feed shortly after we finish recording each week. So you guys will be able to check this out and kind of get inside look at some of these games, some of the things we're seeing, some of our thoughts on these games and matchups. Again, even if you're just playing DFS, there's some cool stuff in here that'll help you out to kind of see behind the curtains on how we're thinking through these things. So with that, we're going to get out of here. We will see you back here next week. We'll see you on 1 week season throughout the weekend, and we will see you at the top of the props leaderboard. We'll see you in the money. We'll see you in the money this weekend.
Oh, we're here. We'll see you at the top rung of the ladder on that Mike Evans bet. That's where we'll see you. And just to close off there, I do understand that this is new to a lot of people. My DMs are always open. I'm JMaryZ on Discord here. You can still get a hold of me even if you're just an inner circle member or even probably a free Discord member. This is, as James says, this is my life. I am in these streets, 8 hours a day. It would be more if my girlfriend would allow it, but I'm here 8 hours a day. I love talking this stuff, and as I said, we can all win together. So these conversations that we have in DM, they do get out to the real Discord, to the Props Insider stuff. And we're not keeping this stuff a secret, but if you do have any questions that you do have, or if there is a barrier that you're looking to get over, please do feel free to reach out, send me a message, and I'll be right there to answer them for you.
Love it. Yep. We will we'll see you on Discord, and we will see you back here next week.
All right. See you guys.